Hey, guess what? We got a mildly positive story today. A handful of people in Congress are apparently trying to put a stop to not all of the Ukraine war funding and arms aid, but at least the cluster bombs. They're drawing the line at cluster bombs and saying, you know what? Maybe this is a bridge too far. And you know what? Even though this is not where I am, even though it is such a minor line that you can, I wouldn't deprive anyone of calling it meaningless. It's at least something. It's a step in the right direction. And so a few Democrats, I forget who, I know it's Omar and Nat Gaetz, and then there were some other Democrats involved too. So far, they are the ones sponsoring this amendment to the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which has to be passed every year. And honestly, the NDAA is more the reason why I wanted to talk about this today. No one ever talks about the NDAA. The U.S. authorizes hundreds of billions of dollars in spending every year, and nobody knows what's in the bill. Every member of Congress just signs off on it because if you vote against the NDAA, you're unpatriotic. It's that simple. That's what they believe, that's what they tell each other, and so they all just vote for it. And so this is a very minor amendment. It will hardly impact the budget, and even if it passes, the CIA will find a way to launder cluster bombs to Ukraine anyway, just like they did with the Contras back in the 80s. But, you know, you have to crawl before you can walk. So even though I think at the end of the day it's going to be meaningless, I'm glad that someone is at least saying something so that they're putting themselves on the record and saying, hey, you know what? I opposed something. Sure, maybe we failed, but at least you tried. It's better than nobody trying. Because that's how most stuff gets through Congress. No one tries to stop it. The NDAA, we know every year it's going to pass. But I wish there were more people who voted against it and got up and spoke out against it. Most people don't, though, because even though they all, most of them know it's a bunch of BS, I won't swear, they feel powerless, they know they're powerless, and they'd rather just go along to get along because they don't want everyone mad at them. They don't want to be like Thomas Massie voting against the CARES Act. They're a combination of cowardly, corrupt, and apathetic all rolled into one. And so if you're willing to, it's not asking very much to just put your name down and say, you know what, I'm not for this. But if you do that, it instantly, on my list, shoots you above every other member of Congress. But anyway, I'd like to see more amendments like this. I'd like to see an amendment that says, you know what, you can't send F-16s to Ukraine either. But you know what the funny thing is? Remember when it used to be that Congress had to pass a law in order to authorize the government to do something? Now Congress has to pass laws to restrict the bureaucracy or the presidency from doing something. So the state of nature here is that the president can do whatever he wants at any time. He can spend whatever he wants on whoever he wants, send whatever weapons wherever, and that's just the way it is. And now Congress is trying to come in and tell the president, no, you can't do that. Whereas the way that we're told that our so-called system of checks and balances works is that Congress makes the laws and the president just enforces them. I mean, who could possibly have any faith in the U.S. political system or in so-called democracy? The people who whine about democracy the most are the people who have the least respect for it. The people who have been instrumental in dismantling it. And so if there ever, was a possibility that democracy could work in America, these people have done their best to make sure to discredit that idea. And yet they want to hold themselves up as the great defenders of democracy. We live in a post-ideological era. No one in politics is interested in ideology. They're interested in increasing their own power and wealth. And whatever ideology they use to dress up their rent-seeking actions is just window dressing. It is rhetorical flourish. But then you get rare cases where a couple of people in Congress actually seem to believe in something. It's always something small. It's never something very big. And so, a lot of times it's things that I don't even agree with, that I think are bad. But I can look at them and say, you know what, hey, at least you're actually standing for something. That's a rare trait. And it makes me think, you know what, if things keep getting worse, maybe these people will get better. Maybe there's a chance that there would be some resistance, let's say, to a preemptive nuclear strike on Moscow. Just throwing that out there. So is this amendment going to pass? Probably not. You see, cluster bombs are only bad when Putin uses them. And you see, the president's already made his decision. And so who are we to go back on it now, if not unpatriotic traitors to Russia? I mean, really, because these people who oppose using cluster bombs, what are they really opposing? They're opposing using cluster bombs on Russians. They want to protect Russians. Isn't that terrible? Who would ever want to protect a Russian? You see, Russians, they belong in a shark tank. The only good Russian is a dead Russian sitting in the belly of a shark. That's what the NAFO crowd tells us. And anyone who disagrees is a Putin puppet. You know, I always talk about how I didn't like or support Russia's side going into this war. And I still don't. My feelings on Russia really haven't changed. I'm pretty neutral on Russia. And I don't really care to see them victorious. But the conduct of Ukraine and its supporters, its government, the entire Ukrainian side has been so vile and vitriolic that I really do, on an emotional level, really want to see Ukraine lose. So I don't want to see Russia win. I don't care to see them win, but I do care to see Ukraine lose. And as I've said in the past, that's the only way that the killing is going to stop anyway, because Ukraine can't win. They won't win. And so Russia probably will be content to continue on with this for years. I mean, look at how long the U.S. was in Afghanistan. 20 years. So the Ruskies are going to go on with this, and they're not going to stop. But it is the country of Ukraine, because that's whose civilians really are under fire here, who are in the crossfire, I should say, between the two armies. Considering that the Ukrainian armed forces cannot win, I would hope that they would negotiate an end to the war. But I know from how they've conducted themselves thus far that they would never do that either. And that is part of the reason why I've grown to feel contempt towards the Ukrainian side. And when I say the Ukrainian side, I primarily mean supporters of Ukraine in the West. Not even necessarily people in Ukraine. Obviously, I don't speak their language, so I don't know what most of them are saying, other than, Zelensky, who is, I don't take seriously. I think he's a clown, and I know that's an overused cliche at this point, because he literally was a clown. But I mean, I do think he's playing a part. I remember who he was back when he ran for president. Now he's playing a different character. So I don't take him seriously. I laugh at Zelensky. He's a funny figure. But the NAFO crowd, although they make me laugh a lot too. But knowing that those are Western people like me who speak English, a lot of Americans, and it's just like, the idea that I might bump into one of those people like in the grocery store just disgusts me. But anyway, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.